Hey everyone, it's Harbinger here. I wanted to make a quick video on some of the small and maybe not so small issues that I've sort of come across when playing air simulator battles nowadays in War Thunder. They're not as big as issues that make it necessarily unplayable, like really annoying, sort of like ground simulator, but some changes that I think could be made would really help flow and honestly not the playability but the actual enjoyment of sim. Because for me, being a primarily sim player nowadays, I've been playing sim for roughly only like maybe 2.5 years, so not as long as others, but I play it a lot, mainly anytime I log into War Thunder. It still has some things that could be changed and adjusted to make it a lot more enjoyable, because air sim, not only majority of players don't only play it for the the high rewards, which nowadays don't really get that much anymore due to the extreme reward nerf that Gaijin made, since players would pretty much just sit in the airfields and not actually play in the matches, which is really annoying. But fortunately, instead of actually like doing something about that, Gaijin just decided to change the actual rewards that you get. By the way, sorry that I sound real groggy. It's currently 3 a.m. or 3:30. Don't question why I'm up at this hour, but anyways, there are just changes that I really think should be made. And Gaijin has done this in the past, where they've actually fixed or done things that actually made a really big impact for simulator. I think the main would be the reworking of RWRs or aircraft, especially top tier aircraft, the modern ones. Now the RWRs display much more information, and they actually help you, because in case you didn't know, a while back they never told you if you were fired at by a radar missile. They didn't display what aircraft it was, if it's a digital RWR. It doesn't give you information like if it's a PD, if it's an air interceptor, if it's an air defense, AAA, that kind of thing. And there's still a lot more to add to the RWRs, but yeah, I think that's an example of a pretty good change that Gaijin has made. And the issues that I have listed, and maybe some solutions to those, won't be as big as that, but it will still, just make the quality of life a little better. So the first one is going to be A9Ms. Now, I'm not a USSR main or a Germany main. US, USSR, and Sweden a good bit. I'm also top tier in Germany, but I don't really play the MiG-29 that much anymore. But one of the very annoying things that I run into is dealing with AIM-9Ms, and it's the sole factor that you cannot see them. In realistic battles, you get the little diamond that appears whenever they're fired, even though they're smokeless. You still see that diamond that appears that says missile, and it gives you the distance, and you can tell if it's coming at you if that distance is rapidly dropping. But in sim, you don't have that. You don't have these unique tools that give you situational awareness. So it's really just a guessing game when it comes to AIM-9Ms. You have to sort of anticipate the missile coming, which is, the right way to do it. But the fact that you just can't see them, really leads to players having to dump their flares and pull all crazy maneuvers to try to decoy them, because the AIM-9M does not really treat flares like other missiles. With other missiles, the missiles will just either bite on flares, they'll immediately go for them, or if they're fired in rear aspect, they will jump to the flares, but as they pass the flares, they'll see the exhaust from that aircraft again. And so that's kind of how you can avoid those missiles. But the AIM-9M doesn't really worry about that. if the A9M locks you, like if someone uses the radar to help with lock, so even though you're dropping on these flares trying to pre-flare them, that radar can still allow the A9M to focus on you, and once it's fired and it's fired on you, you're its main target, and it'll base all of its actions off of you. So even if you're dumping flares and it turns its seeker off, since the A9M uses suspension of tracking, it'll still maneuver and use its inertial guidance to hit you. And so, which is, you know, a unique way that they work, but the fact that you can't see them means that you can't just decoy them. You actually have to pull, you have to really spam your flare button, especially if you don't know when it's coming. Like, you don't know if that Griffin or that F-16's got a shot off on you, even if their nose is not pointing at you. You gotta dump your flares and, you know, pull and change your direction a bunch, really try to avoid it. And sometimes that's not even enough, because especially in the flanker, if you're dogfighting someone, you lose a lot of your speed very quickly, and you just don't have the speed to keep maneuvering. So I think the main change for this is to sort of not make them have smoke anymore, like give them a smoke trail, but to give them a smoke trail that is very lower in, I guess you could say, opacity. Think of it going into Photoshop, using a paintbrush, and then drawing like a white line that looks like a smoke trail. And then you go to your paintbrush settings and you lower the opacity so it's not as bold and bright, and then you just paint it again. I think that's a better change. That way it's not necessarily unseeable, but it's, if you're not paying attention, you won't notice it as much as you do with the very standout smoke trails that other missiles leave. And I think if it's done right, it won't necessarily make the A9M useless or like any other missile. It'll still be a little difficult to see, but if you're really paying attention to your target or the person that you're in a fight with, you can actually be able to see it and then make the right decisions based off of that. So I think that's a all right change, but it just, you know, you really need to think about it and like how that will actually affect the missile. But I think done right, it won't be too bad. The next one is AWACS. I think AWACS should be added at some point in the game, and this is something especially a lot of sim players, this is something that they say a lot. But AWACS can provide information to players through data link that sometimes they won't get on their own. And because, you know, the only thing you have to really find people in sim is your radar. You can't always see them, especially if they're far away, or, you know, even depending on your graphics settings, like they won't appear as close as you would think. And I'm going to talk about this in the last one, but even if you see somebody, you won't be able to tell if they're friendly or not, because, you know, a lot of times you get teams where it's like the US on one team but Japan on the other team. So you could be playing an F-15, but there's also Japan on the other team that has an F-15. You may see that F-15, you can think it's either hostile or friendly. You won't know unless you use your radar. So the presence of an AWACS, you know, one for each team, can help provide players a little more information that they can make their decisions based off. And it also will help keep the flow of combat going, because sometimes people will just fly low and hide behind mountains or just stay away from all the fighting. But AWACS will give a visual and paint those targets and allow people to see them, and that'll allow fighting to keep going. Players have more incentive to engage people. And also it can help lower the team killing. Team killing is something that happens a lot in sim. About the same amount or even more than RRB. Because players just block somebody, but they generally don't know if they're friendly or not, and they don't really check. So I think that's some of the main reasons why AWACS should be added. Next is airfields need SAM sites. SAM sites is sort of a very controversial topic because a lot of people believe that the game's not ready for them yet. But then some people say, well, there's issues with CAS is too strong in ground battles. Airfields can be camped, and that's gonna my main reason here is that airfields can be easily overrun. Let's say in this scenario, you went out and you shot down a couple of guys, but you're using the F-16, you had to use all your missiles because oh boohoo, they don't track or whatever, and or the enemy flared them, and you're only down to like one missile or no missiles, and you're having to race back to the airfield because you're low on fuel. And then you get these two guys behind you that see you with the radar, they're locking you, they're trying to shoot you, but you're flying away from them, you're flying back towards your airfield, so their missiles don't really hit you. And so you get to your airfield and you manage to land because they don't get too close, you get shot at, but they stay in the area. They're just right outside of the Rollins. I think that's what the airfield's primarily, Rollins. Stay outside of that range, and they just sit there and wait for you, and then you finally get off the ground, but then you see on your radar two guys right there, they're locking you, and you're just coming off the ground slow, you can't really maneuver, your missiles won't really track that well because they're skimming across the deck, and they start pushing into you. Current air defenses, the Rollins, they're not very effective. Like, I've seen Rollins fire 10-15 missiles at this one guy. He's just doing these simple maneuvers of pulling away, and they're not hitting them. So I think the addition of SAM sites makes airfields more dangerous to get near, which I think can be a good addition because airfield camping is just a pretty sucky thing to do. It's it's not really skillful, it's just plain dirty, and even if a player wanted to go and try to get kills off an airfield, it should be pretty much a death sentence for them to do so. So yeah, maybe they should hit this one guy coming off the ground, but they have a Patriot sight or S-400, shooting missiles at them, and they get smoked out of the air anyway. I think it's a little aggressive as a change, but I think it's something that can really help because no one likes airfield camping. I've seen the same people that were camping my airfield get mad whenever one of my teammates camp airfields or camps their airfields, and it's just lame. I think SAM sites could really fix that. Next one is going to be the maps. I think this one will surprise some people. The maps might need to get bigger. And hear me out. The reason is that with the upcoming changes and the very likelihood of Fox 3s being added, the map size doesn't allow for a lot of room to climb. Right now you can try to fly out and try to climb or even side climb, but doing that kind of gives all the other players enough time to start honing in on you and target you with their radars, and by the time you get ready to shoot, they're just right underneath you. They just shoot their missiles up like the ASAT and take you out. Plus Fox 3 missiles, some of them can travel pretty far, and so they're just, with the new addition of more radar missiles, especially Fox 3s, there's just not going to be a lot of room to work with, because you can't push too far in and you get overwhelmed, and you can't hang back because they're not going to come to you. So I think map sizes should get a little bigger. They don't need to double in size like the usual ARB maps that you see. I think they're called enduring conflict matches. Those maps, like, it shouldn't be that big of a change, but just moving the airfield back further and maybe widening it by another layer of grid zones, or maybe even 2 layers, I think that could help a little bit. and it just allows more room to work with, especially on some of the other maps. Like I think Vietnam is one of the smallest, and that is just not really that fun of a map in my personal opinion. Next one's gonna be the Lend-Lease problem. I don't know if a lot of you, if you watching this about Sim, you probably don't watch Spooks, and a lot of Spooks people are not going to be watching this one since he primarily plays ground. But he did a video on, it was called the Lend-Lease problem, and he talked a lot about how Lend-Lease affects tank battles because you get a lot of teams that have the same vehicles as you, and how that sort of affects the gameplay. And that really does apply to Sim pretty well. The fact that you're facing the same plane as you, for instance, like what I mentioned earlier, the US on one team and Japan on the other team, you're using the F-15, and then you find other people using the F-15J. It's kind of annoying because your aircraft, you choose your aircraft based off not only your personal preference, but like the advantages that it can give you. There's a reason why you would use the flanker over the MiG-29, or the MiG-29 over the flanker, the F-16 over the F-15. But when you face the same aircraft as you, you're like, well, what do I do here? It's really, yeah, you can say it comes down to the pilot, but this is War Thunder. No one here is Maverick. So it really makes the combat stale. Like I've faced F-16s in my F-16, and we just sit there trying to turn into each other, and eventually what happens is one of us just falls out of the sky. Either I do or he does, because we've tried using this one maneuver to really try to get the advantage, but it doesn't work. Or one of us just gets third-partied by the other one's teammate. But yeah, it's just very stale, not really that fun. That's what that's what we want out of Sim, is fun and immersion. That's what makes it enjoyable. If you're playing Sim not for the immersion, then you might as well go back to ARB. But and the main issue with the Lend-Lease is it leads to team killing more often. That is probably one of the main things that I see people get TK'd for, is the fact that they're using the same aircraft as some other players on the other team. I know one thing that happens a lot is like when Italy is on one team and Sweden is on the other, a lot of Gripen players, they get shot down. With my Gripen, I've gotten shot down a good bit for that same reason. And it seems like such a solvable problem that shouldn't really be here, but I think the solution to that is to change the matchmaking to where similar aircraft are on the same team. And that could be really done by moving, NATO aircraft to fight alongside other NATO aircraft, and then, Germany and Russia would probably have to be the ones teamed up the most, as well as China. Even though China does have an F-16, a lot of people don't use it anymore because, they get the J-11s in the game now, which is, got a lot more to it than the F-16 does, especially the F-16 MOU. The bigger reason to use that than the F-16. But and also maybe add more criteria to the matchmaking. Maybe not just the tech tree itself, but maybe also the sub trees in it. One of the most annoying ones, and this might make a lot of people mad, I didn't really like the addition of the Hungarian tech tree the way they did it Italy, because if you're a new player and want to get as many top-tier aircraft as fast as possible, you could just grind Italy. Might be a little rough at the start, but as you pick up and then you actually make it the top tier, it'll be very rewarding, because you got an F-16, you have the AVA-B plus Harrier, you have a Gripen, and you have a MiG-29, all in the same tech tree. And that really just, anytime I see Italy on your team, I know it's going to be a rough match, because they're going to be players that they have MiG-29 and the Gripen all on one, and I'm sitting here playing the Su-27 with Sweden on my team. So now it's like, man, I really have to try to rely on my radar. And if you use the Su-27 a lot, you know the radar's not really that perfect. Yeah, I think there should be more criteria when it comes to matchmaking, even if it means restricting the aircraft that can be joined. For instance, we all remember the event that they did a while ago, or not a while ago, it was actually recently, where they had the it was like a test for a new game mode where they had the US on one team and Germany on the other, where the US was escorting bombers and Germany was attacking. Well, you can only use certain aircraft in that game mode. If you had, you know, one of the aircraft that was allowed and other aircraft that was not allowed, you wouldn't be able to choose taking those aircraft. And I think that should be something that could be added sim. So like if the US is on one team and the USSR is on the other, let's say Italy gets pitted with the US on, not against the US, with the US on the same team, then you will not be allowed to bring in the MiG-29 because you got the USSR and Germany on the other team, which you have MiG-29. So, and with Italy, you still get the Gripen and the F-16 and the AV plus. Can't take that MiG-29 because that will just cause issues. So something like that, I think, should be a change that should be made. Last one, didn't make really any points on, but it's aircraft refining. I think there should be adjustments to how the radars work and flight models. I've seen some things, a lot of people talk about the Su-27's flight model. It bleeds speed pretty fast. Very problematic because you try, you know, dogfight against an F-16 and F-15 and you like 2-3 turns in and you just start falling out of the sky, which is, you know, this is the older model of the Su-27, but it's still not something that should be happening that quickly, especially if you're managing your energy. But it's just, I think a little reworking can be done to refine the aircraft, make them more realistic, because sim relies on the realism of the aircraft, their flight models and functions of the radar. Sim relies on that. The last point I'm going to make is more of player-based issues, which I think sounds wrong, because I'm not really one to blame players or try to tell people how they should play, but a lot of players have the tendency to just fly low, and that makes the radar missiles pretty redundant, not only for you who's shooting a radar missile at them, but also them shooting a radar missile at you. Because let's say I'm high up at 20,000 feet, because I had the time to be able to side climb to that height, and you got an F-16 that's moving along the deck, and I see him, I shoot him, and he sees that I'm painting him with my radar, and he detects the launch, and he's like, okay, do I defend? I see him he's right out there, let me pop up and shoot him. Because he was flying low, his missile has less of a chance to get to me, and the fact that he popped up and my radar is no longer being thrown off by multipathing against the ground, he's just gonna get smoked by my R-27ER, and his missile won't even reach me. It won't even reach me, because he jeopardized his ability to use his radar missiles in BVR because he was scraping the deck the entire time. So yeah, it makes the radar missiles redundant, especially for you if you're trying to shoot somebody that might be higher than you. Especially if you're in an F-16, which the Sparrow can reach out pretty far. If you fly high, you give that missile enough altitude and speed, it'll pretty far. And I have beaten R-27ERs in that case, mainly because I'm flying higher and my missile can reach out further and I can fire first, while they're flying lower and have to shoot up at me, and so their missile won't reach me as fast. And so I think that's something that I think players should really recognize, because everyone's really excited for the additions of Fox 3s in the next update, but I believe that they're going to be widely disappointed with using them, because they're not going to work. You fly low, scraping the deck, trying to shoot somebody that's also scraping the deck or flying higher than you, your missile is not going to have that high of a chance of taking them out. But if you fly high and you stay high and target people that are also flying high, or people that are trying to pop up to shoot you, you'll have more success with those missiles. And last point is that it makes fighting less optimal. Starting a dogfight on the deck, kind of a bad situation, because it allows you no room to regain speed. Let's say you're an F-15 trying to fight a Su-27 or a Gripen, and you're trying to pull in, get him into the HUD, take a gunshot, but you're bleeding all your speed doing that, because you're only like 500 feet above the deck, because you guys were scraping the deck. You're not gonna have enough time to really get your speed back up, and that's something that your enemy can capitalize on. But yeah, that's not really a fixable issue by Gaijin like the first ones were, but I think these are things that should be taken into consideration. The player-based one, I think that's just something that players should really take into consideration, and then the other points I think should be actual fixes that Gaijin could make. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. I know I'm not like Spookston or European Canadian, where I have all this knowledge and I know exactly what needs to be changed. But I think these are just things that I recognize that could make a difference, but not entirely break the game. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe. That sounds weird saying it, but I do plan on making actual videos, and so I'll see you on the next one. Peace.